reasonable, the 25 an hour and the 75 an hour are pretty reasonable labor estimates for 2023. They really are.
Greg, what if they?
We'd be like really good employers actually for paying an apprentice 25 an hour. We'd be really good employers. They're usually closer to 20, so we're doing an extra 5. That's just what I like on side work. If I had like a first year apprentice, I'd be like, can you give me 25 an hour? Because they're making 16 out the hall, so I could, you know, an extra 10 an hour. But that's just, I'm pulling from, you know, what I know.
Best Buy is doing it wrong. We will give you free installation if you buy a $200 or more expensive radio. Like, that's the wrong way. We should be
You
charging.
put a 6 system in the minivan?
Yeah, speakers, sub, amp, most of it.
I'm just kidding, that thing's so nice.
Did you do a markup on your prices at all?
No, I'm not.
How was it? They're running out of business.
To be honest,
That's why
for
it's gonna
this
be like,
job,
all right,
guys,
what if
most companies will
a
charge
crazy
between
system in your van?
$750 to $850 for this job.
So I did not mark up my materials. I did not mark up the labor on the apprentice. That's like a 10 to 20% markup on all of those items, right? You mark up for materials. Sure, you drove to the supply house, you got it. You're getting the wholesale too. You might make a couple bucks that way. So the real number would actually, well, I simplified this for the sake of the performance profile, but the real number is going to include markups too, on labor and on time and on material. But
Does the customer see that you marked it up?
You also got to factor in
They don't, right?
those markups.
not unless they can call the supply house and figure out exactly how much you paid for it.
Insurances.
Do they just get one price?
Put all that calculation. It's just to cover your basis on all your other things that no one really thinks about. Insurance, workman's comp.
Is the customer gonna?
MC in a commercial.
Most of the time, there could be a permit involved and all that.
Do you ever get a customer that wants to know like the breakdown of like how you're charging them, or can you just tell them, hey, it's $1,000, you want it or not?
I would give them a
you break it
breakdown,
down.
but then I would calculate the material cost and the time cost would include those markups without them being written in.
But you have to give them an itemized receipt though.
So what?
If it was itemized, I would just mark up the labor, I'd mark up the materials separately, and instead of the apprentice being 25 an hour, he'd be 30 an hour, or whatever, on paper. I'd really only be paying him 20, I'd be pocketing 5 an hour.
Oh shit.
Well, you're not really
Industry
technically
standard
pocketing 5 an hour.
That's standard.
Industry state, you always make money, you always mark it up. Yeah.
You mark it up, but you're also paying, you gotta factor in, you're subtracting now workman's comp, your health insurance.
Unemployment insurance, yeah.
But
You
you-
offer a good benefits package, you got a 401k, you're matching the 401k, what, 2%, 3%, what are you doing?
But can the apprentice come back at you like, oh, you only gave me 25 and you charge the customer 30? Like if they
When's
saw
the
the
apprentice
receipt.
ever gonna see the bill?
I mean, the customer's gonna see the bill.
The apprentice won't see the bill.
My apprentices.
Isn't that kinda like a risky
And they
situation?
understand why they don't get it.
No, and if the apprentice was like, I want 30 an hour, I'd be like, no, and if he argued, I'd be like, fired. Yep.
That's
See?
retaliation.
What's that?
That's retaliation.
No, it's not. Nope, prove it. This is gonna, then it's like, who's lawyers about it? But no, it doesn't happen. It's, everybody knows that they mark stuff up. They do. What did you just have a washer put in?
Hmm?
You just had, would you have a laundry appliance replaced
Yep.
in your house, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you paid a markup for the appliance, you paid a markup for the labor, you paid for the gas in the truck that it took to get to your house. They have all of that factored into that price.
Did they ever tell you an itemized version of everything you were paying, or they just gave you one price?
No, they just give one price. They just give like hey, it's probably like $600 for the,
And most people don't ask questions. They go, okay.
because it's too complicated for everybody.
So,
When you start seeing like a
And they probably remove the old one for you too.
yeah.
that's what you pay for with appliance installation, because like that, I'm like, what the
Yeah.
hell?
What's
Yeah.
gonna happen is that's just gonna go to the junkyard.
No, so they're gonna
Let me get back on task here. So it's gonna be $650 to $5.50. We're gonna make a little bit of profit, so let's just call that an even $700, right?
Man, you wanna go
Take that extra
$44.
$44.50 for going. I gotta get magic cards somewhere. You know what I mean?
To make them feel like you're giving them a deal, I charge them $699.98.
So then what I'll do is I'll go
Not
back
even 700.
and I'll be like, it's 700, right? And I'll try to catch Justin's wife, and she's there and he's not. I'll be like, it's 700, and she's gonna be like, oh my god, and I'm gonna be like, oh dude, you know what? I'll do it for $655.50.
So
Oh
what
my God,
I do a check fee and a cash fee.
Yeah, I did the same thing. You paid cash, it was less, because I didn't have to report that.
So the Uncle
It is, I would do 700 on that if you're giving me a check.
Yeah, there's other companies that they say like, yo, the
Cash,
estimate
I'll
is
give you
free if you hire
655,
us.
I will just remove 50
So if we go and you don't do anything, you have to pay still like a.
So I don't wanna deal with
We were
change,
getting
I
prices
just
for our
want that
garage
cash.
door, well, I was like, oh, it's $75 to come out and look, and I was like, boop.
Or I'll do 56.
Where does,
56.
where does
now-
Cash App fall in that? Like if somebody was to take the Cash App,
What? You can, but I gotta thank you for it. Alright.
Reed, what about if you wanna have a customer pay you through Cash App? Does that have to be, is that like something you have to
Yeah,
report?
it's all reported, it's traceable.
But the IRS doesn't look at certain digital transfer apps yet. It took them about 5 years to look at Venmo. Like they had no way to see what was happening on Venmo. Now they can see Venmo. Anything that is not a cash payment, you should do on the books so you don't get in trouble. The penalties and fines for tax fraud are friggin' gross, dude. They're so expensive.
They're not my pencil anyway.
Wasn't he asking
I
about
fucking
attendance?
love that video.
He was asking about attendance and then he leaves.
Right, so Justin's wife is now walked into the room and she's like,
I don't get it.
I love the price. I love the hi-hats that you showed me you're gonna put in. You seem like you're a good electrician. How long is this gonna take? Because I'm getting married, he's gotta sand barrels. There's a lot going on today. What do you tell her?
At that point, it wouldn't be my wife at that point. It'd be my fiance.
You're supposed to be helping, not splitting hairs, bro. So I'm gonna chime in and I'm gonna be like, yo, it's gonna be 2 hours on Thursday. And then I gotta send my apprentice in on Friday because I have to go to a bid meeting. But he's completely capable, it's the easy part, the pulling the wires, the hard part, it'll be totally fine. And on Friday, he's gonna be here for,
Lights and wiring?
Lights is gonna be
Lights and
30
switches.
minutes.
Lights and
3
out.
hours.
how long? 3 hours.
3 hours.
3 hours. Yep. And that's your look ahead. You're like, okay, well, I know I'm gonna be here for this long on Thursday and this long on Friday, right? So that means that you could either do a morning or an afternoon job on Thursday too, right? Because we're only gonna be there for 2 hours out of an 8-hour day. So then we can squeeze another job in, or we can leave that time open for emergency service calls, not like a big electrician thing, but sometimes that's like really an HVAC thing. And then on Friday, you got us, the contract, we can go play golf, we can go mountain biking, but if we really want to do, maybe there is a big meeting, you know what I mean? Most guys will use that time on Fridays to catch up on paperwork, they own their own companies, because it's like a lot of paper.
Yeah, you have, if you want your own company, you have to like
The
report to
quarterly
the IRS
taxes
like
are apparently.
4 times a year.
Yep. So,
This is not the answer.
that's like a super basic estimate, right? Now,
Question I have.
full disclosure, if you guys are doing side work, you can establish a price list. One hi-hat costs me this much to install, right?
Tomorrow.
So it's like, I know back in the day, it was like $75 a hi-hat, right? That was your like rule of thumb, and that factored in an amount of wire and some wire nuts and a switch and stuff. So there are tools out there that will let you estimate without having like having to do all this math, where you can be like that's what they do when they do big commercial jobs. It's like $50 an outlet. Each outlet that's on the print costs $50, right? And that includes the outlet, and then they estimate an average amount of wire, and they factor that all into. We're not getting out of electrician realm and into project manager estimator realm. But that's another way that it's done. There's actually really good computer software that I used to have called the National Electric Estimator. And you can put in the square footage of the building, number of switches, number of outlets, and it'll spit a price out at you, because it would search the internet for the lowest prices they could find for the material, and then you could put in your percentage profit that you wanted in your markup, and it would do all of it for you right through a number out. I had tremendous success with that.
I mean, I know that we might have touched on it, but what is involved when you're adding an outlet? Like, I know you probably got to turn off the main disconnect, but then do you have to run a cable to the branch circuit? And
So, well, are you, does it have to be a dedicated outlet, or is it just a convenience outlet that we can tap off of something? Like, is it for a freezer that we need a dedicated line for? Or like a sump pump where we want just on its own breaker?
just like its own, like one of these, like just like its own thing.
Right, but is it on its own breaker, or is it fed from an existing circuit?
I guess that's my question.
Well, you gotta tell me what you're plugging into it.
If you're plugging in like just like regular stuff like a TV, like charging your phone type
You
stuff.
tap off the closest circuit that,
But how do you tap into the wiring?
you would, so let's say that This is tough, because, oh, here we go, this is perfect, because everything's piped in here, right? But I had to have an outlet here, right? So let's say I wanted to add an outlet here, right? Closest outlet is that one, so what I would do is I would go up,
Now close as that one, right?
well, we're gonna pretend that's not there, right?
No, we want it down on the end of this. So
You
I
want-
don't
you want- that's-
want to run a cord on the long
Yeah,
cord.
we want it here instead, but we wanna keep that one too. So, it depends on the structure,
There's no
right?
conduit, like if it's all like a house and you're like
It's a
inside
house,
of.
so we'll pretend we have a drywall ceiling in this room also, right? So what has to happen is, you have to fish a wire from in the ceiling, inside this wall down to this box, and the other end of that wire will run across the ceiling and come down here.
So it's kind of like what we do here with the practicals, because you can kind of like connect them together, but.
Right, but now there's drywall in the way.
So you have to like make a hole and then run a wire down to then take the outlet out so you can see it.
And then you would connect that wire in parallel, right, with the other outlet. So you remove that outlet completely, and then all of the blacks and whites would be tied together, black to black, white to white, ground to ground, with pigtails coming off for that outlet. And then you would now have another wire that was energy, because there's already going to be a minimum of one wire in here. All right, probably going to be two, and one of those will be the one that's feeding them. The other one will go out to another outlet somewhere. You're adding a third one and tying them all together with pigtails off for the outlet. So that outlet still works, but then we have the hot and the neutral over here. And then you'll just rinse and repeat. You'll fish down the wall, put it in an old work box, and hook up a receptacle and put it in.
How far up the wall do you make the hole? Like all the way up in the ceiling?
Depends on the framing of the house.
So,
So let's go with this. I've done this so many times.
I have two guys, I got my own, but yeah.
You can see you got a top plate here. So what you're gonna do is you're literally figure the top plate. You're gonna have probably two studs, so that's 3 inches because it's literally inch and a half.
That's like how all, most houses are, like that.
Most houses either are double plate or single plated on a header.
Do you want to talk about stick framing or not yet?
Depends on
Okay.
depends on the scenario. It depends on the house, the year, and all that when it was made. So all the houses I was in was from the early 19th century, 1800s type deer. We were removing knob and tube, so we were putting holes in plaster. What normally you'll do is you'll drill a hole. You're assuming off the ceiling between 6 to 8 inches.
Why are we going so high?
So high off the ceiling?
Yeah, like why not like somewhere close to
Because
the
there's a top plate. This
top plate.
You're gonna have to drill a hole in this piece of wood, so you're gonna have to be able to get a drill bit in there to drill up. Because this is what allows you to get into the ceiling.
Okay.
Right, so just when they drywall, right? They drywall the ceiling first, and then the drywall goes all the way up to right here. This line right here, because that's the line, I'm sorry, this line. Right here, because that's the line of the ceiling in here. So when they rock all of that in, and you have to be able to, you can't just have your wire come out of the ceiling and be exposed for 2 inches and go back into the wall and go down. You have to be inside the
So you're
wall.
drilling a hole to that first pipe that's horizontal to be able to put the wire through there.
You're drilling a hole through like this, right here, to be able to push the wire up into the ceiling space, so it's not below the drywall.
Okay.
If you come in here instead and you see where the drywall will go, it makes it a lot easier to see that, right? So the drywall here is going to be screwed to these, right? So that'll be, it'll be right here, the drywall, and then the rock, they'll do the ceiling first, and then the wall rock will go right up and touch it right here. This will be the corner.
So like if this is where I was trying to do it at, and like I'm in the room, I'm drilling a hole like in the ceiling or in the wall.
You're drilling a hole through this piece of wood.
But
You
it's
cut a
already,
hole.
it's already complete, like it's already.
So what
Yeah,
happens is
you're
you're
cutting
gonna
a
cut a
hole.
hole, you're gonna cut a hole in the ceiling and on the wall.
Yeah.
But the fact is, you gotta be able to fish that wire around that corner, and you need to be able to get to that.
So
Now,
you're going like this, like if this, let's say this is the ceiling and this is the wall right
we'll
here.
use the actual ceiling right here.
Like you're drilling a hole in the ceiling to be able to pass through this side to come down.
Yeah, and then you need a hole. Well, you don't always need you may need a hole in the wall too to pull the wire through.
I wonder why in the 4 books that we had, they never talked about adding outlets. Like
I wonder that too because it's a pretty.
Like
common
I was waiting
question.
until
It's a very common
all the way
thing.
to the end. I was like, before I leave,
Do you need to add an outlet? You've been waiting 10 months to add an outlet somewhere in your house?
I was like, they're gonna get to that eventually, but we never got to it.
Yeah, so,
And then it depends, you might not have to drill a hole in the ceiling or anything, you could be up in the attic.
yeah.
Be honest, you could be in the crawl space.
If
or
you're on
in
the
basement.
second floor, you can go up and the attic should be open if it's unfinished. The basement, if it's unfinished, will be open in the ceiling. So you could drill down and run a wire across the basement and fish up then. Right? The other thing with drilling the plates is, you don't always need that ceiling hole. If you cut it right, a hole right below the piece where you have to drill a hole, we cut a 6-inch hole for each hi-hat. So with the natural curve of the steel fish, if you push it up that hole, it might just go over to that hole, and you might be cool. Most times you need to cut both though. Yeah.
Okay.
This is the thing, right? We electricians are known in the trades as the people who F up the walls. We are. We're the ones that completely destroy the walls wherever we go. Because we gotta put wires in them, right? I feel like it's so weird because
the guy takes the hammer and just goes wham into the drywall.
Let me
just
show
to
you-
make your hole.
let me show you what you're gonna use to make the hole.
A sawzall?
No, well, yeah, you can, if you're good.
Drywall saw.
Drywall saw, no, I'm talking about,
A hole saw?
no, that's not the side.
Probably something that has like a point to it.
This is the blank cover from a 4-inch square box. A 4-inch by 4-inch handle is all any of you need. Your hand fits in there. So I always would use one of these, and I would just trace this. When you cut holes and you're in someone's home, they hate having holes. Unless you're gonna patch them, cut nice, neat, square, nice looking holes. So at least it's not like an abomination to look at. It looks like it's very calculated and someone took their time and measured and cut. It also makes it way easier for the person coming behind you to patch. To just put, and I save the pieces too.
So let's
Use
do-
a hole
I
saw.
use a hole saw
Same
all the
principle.
time.
I know
You
plenty of guys that do this.
drill a hole, take a piece of lath, you
Yeah.
screw it into the wall, you put the plug back in.
Use that.
You can. It's
Put it
the
into
same.
your drill.
Put it in your drill.
Has an arbor. There's
Yeah, there's an arbor
bit
in
that
there
comes
with-
out, but just like a pilot bit to
A
start.
pilot bit.
I've seen both ways look just as nice, but what you don't want is some jagged, ridiculous, like semi-trapezoidal like hole.
If you use your method, what would you use to make the hole?
Drywall saw.
Oh, the one that has like a little point?
Yeah, just like a keyhole saw. Sometimes they call rock saw.
That's what I do. Or I take the oscillator and boom, got a square hole.
These people ask me, hey, can you help me out from Alex? I'm like, oh, I haven't got to that part yet. I'm
This
like
is
the
the
last part.
saw.
It's a Harbor Freight one. Don't buy it, just to let you know. Do not buy the Harbor Freight drywall saw.
So just so everybody knows, before you guys leave in 20 minutes, this is today's date and this is the time we took on our little estimating project. If you could fill all of that out, that would be amazing. I feel bad. I wish you asked that like when I met you, because I would have
Because
just
I feel
taken
like-
20 minutes and explained it.
There's been some people that have asked me, oh, you've been on nutrition? Oh, can you help me out some outlets or some lights? I'm like, I'll get to that eventually. But
Yeah.
I'm on the last week and I haven't learned that yet.
That's side work, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And when you guys are starting out, cash only policy on side work until you get yourself up and rolling, right? And it's always a good idea to entertain liability insurance for that as well. You don't have to have your masters to get insurance. You can call a State Farm and they'll hook you up. I got a State Farm guy. If you want his number, let me know.
I thought Aflac was one of those ones if you got injured, they pay you.
Nope, there's no signature, that's fine.
Based on like what you said, Justin, based on what you said about how it depends on when the house was made and all that stuff, it feels like that should have been like its own module. Like it should have been like module 14, like adding outlets, because it incorporates everything.
Yeah.
That's where I've been like in my night classes, I've been doing
I got a question
because
about.
there's very rare that you're gonna go into a new construction, like a whole old construction.
Yeah.
So you're going in to fix things, you're repairing things, you're,
When you don't know how the house is.
for me, it was
Like I say right here. Like
upgrading the electrical in the house, because it's all knob and tube wiring in the house. So they need to bring up, because most insurances that they found out your house had knob and tube.
That'll
Which is
come
kinda
with time.
insane.
You'll be able to look. I can look at, and I'm sure you can do it too. I can look at any house and be like, I know exactly how that's framed just by looking at it. Knowing the age of the house helps a
Great.
lot too.
Next time Wes comes in and he's like, oh, what kind of supplies you need? I highly suggest that one of these three should be like covered in like plaster, like
Rocket.
already after, like,
So I've been trying to do that in the back corner with the steel frames. The fact is, we can't block this door for people seeing in.
oh, okay.
So I'm trying to get the back room.
Cause we're gonna, like you said, we're gonna run into mostly is like houses that are finished, and if all we ever had was just like the easy, like the roughing stage,
Dude,
then
there's places on campus that we need to add outlets. I wish I knew, because we could have done a hands-on.
Last
Friday to
night-
add them. It's
Last
just like fishing the light switches.
Can you do that this Friday?
I seen the lights went out.
What's that?
Can you do that this
power went
Friday?
out,
This
Friday?
at 5:50.
I gotta figure out who wants it, but I could.
I'm sure everybody can use it, cause none of us know how to do
Power
it.
didn't come back until pushing 3 o'clock this morning.
Appreciate it, Alex,
Yeah,
Sarah.
that's crazy, because we had to shut down our other clinic.
Someone hit the transformer down by
Yeah, there's no spot for a signature.
We left, there was a car that was on fire by Applebee's.
Really?
Yeah. So the,
Oh, did I sign that?
No, we don't have to sign it.
I was wondering,
Thank you.
because even we had to shut down our, we had to shut down our, we had to shut down one of our clinics down the street from here.
Well, I will.
Right there on Brookshire Boulevard, we had to shut down, they had to bring medications out of the refrigerator.
we have a visitor
That's
from,
terrible. I dealt with that with the medications and like when you have an outage.
And they had to come over to our clinic early this morning and pick up all those medications.
Everybody's got their papers up?
Cool. It was crazy.
no, it was kind of a fun night.
He's just-
There's about 7 rooms that need emergency lights installed in the rooms.
You just did?
Oh, wow.
I just assisting you.
What's that? My sister? What?
They all lasted 90 minutes last night, most of
I'm
them.
trying to do this.
Some didn't turn on.
Oh, fuck you, what you do. You know that, right?
All right, that's enough. Stop.
There'll be emergency lights being added in classrooms later
Are we
on.
doing that too? I mean, I know we need them.
Last night, it was very dark in a lot of
Just
classrooms.
remote heads, right? Just like 90-minute remote heads.
Emergency lights, that's it.
Let me see. Let me see if I can come up with one by tomorrow, and I'll let you know. I kind of already committed to not being here in my head, but that's okay. I can reverse that.
One last question about the outlets. When you, let's say you get to see the outlet that's there, are you just pretty much copying the same wires that let's say like the black's gonna be
All
on
the
one
outlets are
side?
gonna, unless it's like a weird thing, they're all gonna be black to black, white to white, ground to ground, black on the brass, white on the
So
silver.
black and white.
Unless it's a
That's
220
it,
outlet, then it's a whole
just
different.
Yeah, if it's a like a big air, like a big outlet, like one of the big like 240 volt outlets, or if it's like switched or half hot or something.
Do you have to turn off the panel for the whole house or just the
Just the
room you're
breaker
working?
for the circuit you're working on.
Or like we did over here with the light?
Yeah, we just, well, that circuit did a lot more, like a residential circuit, because we know a 277 circuit can do way more work for us. So that, we actually turned off a significant portion of this floor's lighting when we did that. Both times that you were there, we turned off a significant portion of the floor. In the house, you're gonna be turning off 6 or 8 other outlets somewhere in the house probably.
Or lights.
But as
Or
long
lights,
as the
good
room
lights.
you're in is dark, that's how you know you're good.
No, you
No,
don't.
not all the time. Like
Test.
my house, when I rewired it, all my outlets, each bedroom's its own dedicated circuit for outlets, but the lights are marked by floor.
Oh,
Yeah,
shit.
so then my house is, I wired my house the exact same way because we have window units in our bedrooms, we only have air conditioning on the first floor, central air, and I wanted to make sure each bedroom was on its own circuit so that there was no lights dimming when air conditioners cycle.
I would have died.
What's that?
I would have died. I'm like, all right, lights are off. Let me
You're
go
not gonna
touch
die, you're gonna be like, psst, and 120 volts is, don't get me wrong, it 100% can kill you, it is not likely to, it's gonna be more of an uncomfortable tickle.
So just me